Welcome, dear friends, for this 7-minute Bible study. And the subject I thought of presenting before you is about 7 lockdowns of Israel. 7 lockdowns of Israel. The country of Israel in the Bible went through 7 kinds of lockdowns, or 7 occasions at least, where they have experienced. And I would like to present before you each of these 7 occasions where they have gone through the lockdown as a nation. First of all, we see in Exodus chapter 12 and verse 13. Exodus chapter 12 verse 13, lockdown with regard to the angel of death. The angel of death would pass through the houses of Israel, in fact the entire nation. In fact, 2 nations were involved, and one nation took the lockdown seriously, whereas the other nation was not. They were perhaps casual about it. But when the Israelites took it very seriously, and they also did something of what God told them, they put a blood on the doorpost. As a result, what happened is, no one moved from the house. They were all there, and nobody coming out of the house. And when the angel of the death passed by, we can say that they passed the test. They survived the catastrophe. Secondly, we see in Exodus chapter 40 and verse 36. Exodus chapter 40 and verse 36 and 37. Whenever the cloud was moving, the Israelites as a nation, lakhs of people were moving in the wilderness. But when the cloud was not moving, they experienced a kind of lockdown. They did not move, they did not venture, they did not come out wherever they were. Sometimes they are in a particular place and they did not move out of that zone. And so that was a amazing lockdown, because the presence of God, which was symbolic in the cloud, when the presence of God was not leading, they got themselves locked down and they stayed. Suppose there is a 1 week or 21 days, the cloud was not moving, and the Israelites as a nation, lakhs of people did not move. Thirdly, by the way, we are studying together about 7 lockdowns of Israel, and the third lockdown is in Numbers chapter 12 and verse 15. Miriam spoke against God's servant Moses, and as a result, she got some kind of sickness. She became a leper, and because of that, for 7 days she was locked down. Not only that, the entire nation of Israel, lakhs of people, they also got into this kind of situation. They got isolated, they were locked down, and they did not move. 7 days, it must have been very difficult, especially for the children, young people, teenagers. It must be a little boring, or more or less. But after the 7th day, they moved once again. The lockdown was relaxed and they moved. Fourthly, I like this very much. The 4th kind of lockdown. We are studying 7 lockdowns of Israel. The 4th one is Moses with God. Moses went to meet with God on the mountain, Deuteronomy chapter 9 and verse 9. And it was a very strange kind of lockdown. It was a very special kind of lockdown. But in this lockdown, only one individual with God. That was the kind of lockdown. And Moses says in Deuteronomy chapter 9 and verse 9, and those days I did not eat or drink. Wow, what a commitment, what a fellowship, what a lockdown, spending time with God. And now the fifth lockdown is about the Israelites, chapter 9 of Deuteronomy and verse 16. When Moses got himself locked down with God, here are Israelites, they did not know how to spend time. And therefore they are also in a lockdown situation, but instead of fellowshipping with God, they were sinning. They sinned. The lockdown of 40 days was more of a time to give into the flesh for the Israelites, the believers. And of course, the sixth lockdown we read in Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 45 and 46. In Leviticus 13, number of times the word isolation comes. Lepers, when the lepers got leprosy, they went into a camp and locked down. They have to say, I am unclean, unclean, unclean. It must have been very, very difficult for them to be isolated from their own families, work and all those things. Must be very, very difficult kind of lockdown. Seventhly and lastly, the Israelites as a nation, it was the biggest lockdown, I would say. It was a 70 years of lockdown. They lost their own freedom. They went to Babylon. Jeremiah chapter 29 and verse 10 and verse 7 says they got locked down 70 years, and then afterwards God redeemed them. They came out of that lockdown triumphantly, and they were very, very happy. May the Lord add his blessing.